Hello, I'm Ladd, and this is Davis, and today we're going to be talking about the history of homeschooling. Davis, it's estimated the numbers could be as high as 6 million homeschooling students in the United States, 10% of the population. That is a dramatic increase.
Well, that is. If you think that there's 60 million K through 12 students in the U.S. and 10% of them are being homeschooled today, I'm asking the question, what happened in the last 50 years? Because 50 years ago, there wasn't anybody homeschooling in this modern homeschooling movement.
Yeah.
So something happened in the 80s, and then there's been a dramatic progression.
I know when my family started in 1986 in Pennsylvania, it wasn't exactly popular.
That's right.
They were some of the forerunners of this modern homeschooling movement. But what's remarkable is from the point when it started in the early 1980s to 1992, when homeschooling became legal in every state, we've seen a dramatic shift and interest in this topic.
Well, right, a lot happened. Once it was legal in all 50 states, then you started seeing a steady increase. So Rachel and I started in 1996. And in North Carolina, there's plenty of good statistics. We were the 11,000th homeschooler in North Carolina. There's more homeschoolers in North Carolina than private school students today, just to give some perspective of the size and the number of students.
But from when I looked up the stats the other day, from when I graduated college in 2006 to now, homeschooling has doubled in North Carolina, the state where we're
So that's what we're talking about. The history is a history of growth, significant growth, because again, in the mid-90s when we were homeschooling, we were in the minority and we felt it, but we weren't in that minority that your parents were in, where you had to close the blinds and stay inside until 3 in the afternoon because people didn't know how to respond to that. But then slowly over the course of time, as the number of homeschool students went below 1% to 1 or 2% to 5%, then something happened in 2020. And we know what that was. It was the COVID-19 pandemic. And I like to say everybody had a mandatory trial run of homeschooling. I mean, if you think about it, for a couple months, all 60 million students were being homeschooled or schooled at home or some fashion that got them a little bit of a taste of what this could look like.
Yeah, it is remarkable. And the history is a fascinating one, because in America, we went from homeschooling being the primary form of education, with tutoring, the one-room schoolhouse came along, to a multi-billion dollar K through 12 complex system of education. I think the latest figures I saw, up to $800 billion a year, $19,000 per public student on average of investment in a system that is clearly failing. And parents want options. Parents want answers as to what else is out there, what's available.
Right. So the history there of homeschooling is one of something that looked more like homeschooling in the late 1800s, early 1900s, but then really all during the 20th century, it was a growth of the public school system. But then in the 1980s, something happened, and there was this beginning of the modern homeschool movement. So I like to say that the homeschool movement that we're in right now is one of, if not the most significant social, cultural, spiritual, and certainly academic movements of the last 50 years. I mean, you can't ignore that something significant's been going on.
At the bedrock of society is the institution of the family. God created the institution of the family for the father and the mother to train up their children in the Lord. This was to be the bedrock of society. And that parents were to be the primary instructors of their children. And we, especially in our own nation, got away from that. And it really began in the 1840s all the way up to 1918, when every single state now had a public, compulsory K through 12 expanding education system. And it was a dramatic change from taking the children outside the home and now putting them in a public education system largely controlled by government and the government curriculum, and in a different environment than the biblical model.
Well, right, and when you talk about it that way, and then you think of what similar things were happening in the homeschool movement the last 50 years. In the beginning, the 1980s, it was literal grassroots movements, phone call chains. There wasn't an email to get in touch with folks. And then you started having the internet allow for people to spread the word, contact each other. And so even within homeschooling, you started seeing support groups turn into co-ops, turn into all kinds of organized systems so that these 6 million students that were being homeschooled could actually have the support, the curriculum, the way to communicate with each other that is unprecedented and has been partly allowing for the growth, as well as the fact that it's legal and that everybody knows somebody who's homeschooled now. So the stigma has disappeared over the last few decades.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, a dramatic rise, and the resources available are more prevalent than ever. I think people are waking up to the fact that the public education system as a whole is failing. It's not working. And they're seeing things like age-segregated environments, strictly segregated by age. They're seeing things like the classroom model where you're sitting at a desk in front of a screen or at a desk all day as very unhealthy, especially for boys. You're seeing the indoctrination that's taking place, and that the government's getting to decide what they teach your children, versus the homeschool model, where now it restores the parents' right and good responsibility to raise their own children and decide what they're learning in an environment that is free and flexible and not rigid and often not age segregated. And so I think people are waking up in mass numbers to the fact that, wow, this is available. Not only is it available, but a huge number of people are doing it, and I'm not going to be alone in this journey.
Well, right, and even some of what you just mentioned makes me think and be reminded of the fact that homeschooling is not easy. It's hard, and so again, there's statistics out there, especially in North Carolina, that talk about the homeschool longevity. So when a family starts and makes this big decision to homeschool, how long do they stay with it? And the stats show that after 1 year, typically 20% drop out after that first year. After the second year, another 20% will drop out. By the third year, it improves to only 10%, and then by that fourth year, about 5%. So the takeaway from that statistic is that after 3 to 4 years, 45 to 50% of people are in the club. They've made it, they've persevered, they've figured it out, and they're going to continue. So part of what I've seen in that is our own journey. By the first year, we were kicking and screaming trying to figure out if we would even continue that second year.
Right.
But after the second year, we were starting to make our own family goals. And like you were saying, take that family piece back and say, what does our family want to do as a homeschool family? By the third year, we're writing educational philosophies. And by the fourth year, we're committed to this for the long term and never look back, because it was so good for our family. And that's what's beautiful, is to see people feel the freedom and understand that the education of their kids, their development, their training, academically, spiritually, and in every way, is our responsibility as parents. And that can be an overwhelming responsibility, but it's exciting. And it's great to see so many families taking that on.
It is. And we want to be there to help. That's why we're doing this whole series and this whole course, is that we know it's tough, we know it's hard, we know that it takes a lot of perseverance, and we want to be in the trenches with you to help you and to cheer you on, to say you can do it and you can be perseverant in this. Because as you're saying, the first 1, 2, 3 years are the most challenging. After you establish those rhythms of life, you begin to reap the benefits and the blessings of homeschooling in a big way.
That's right. So I'm Davis, this is Ladd, and this has been a little bit of the history of homeschooling.